Marvel.
Known in recent years for tokenizing characters, and by tokenizing characters, I'm meaning race-changing classically white characters, but now Marvel's on to something with some of these Asian characters. Are they any good? Do they suck? Find out on this next video. Before we get started, be sure to follow me over at Twitter for all updates. It's going to be at Eric D. July. Again, that's at Eric D. July. You can also visit my website at ericdjuly.com. You can stay up to date on my podcast and everything that I have going, from music to even these videos. With that being said, today we're going to talk about really some characters that I've already talked about before in the new Agents of Atlas, or more so that's been introduced through this team of the new Agents of Atlas. And some of these are original. Don't get me wrong, aside from Jimmy Woo, yes, some of the leaders, if you will, are either older characters or just completely tokenized characters when you consider Amadeus Cho, which is just Asian Hulk, and then you have Silk, which is just female Asian Spider-Woman, or Spider-Man for that matter. But when it comes to this newer team, the vast majority of them are actually original characters, as in they aren't just copies of previously established other characters. And this is all I ask, man. If I do all of these videos talking about and getting frustrated with how they tokenize these characters, certainly when it comes to live action adaptations and these constant race changes, I gotta credit them and give it where it's due. They're developing, or at least attempting to develop, some original Asian characters. And by Asian, I mean they're all from different spots in Asia. And that's going to be the topic of this video. I'm actually going to just briefly inform you guys who aren't really up to date with Marvel Comics on these newer characters, who they are, where they're from, what their powers are. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Remember, some of these characters popped up recently in the War of the Realms. And War of the Realms was, I guess, Marvel's more recent event before Absolute Carnage. It was a big deal when it popped off, and considering this whole War of the Realms obviously took place in different spots throughout the world, Asia had their own issues, and this is where we got introduced to some of these characters, or these characters were expanded upon. So I want to first start off with the characters who have their own series at the moment. So let's begin with Swordmaster. His real name is Lin Lai, and he's based out of Shanghai. Though he was technically introduced as one of Marvel's Chinese properties last year in 2018, we didn't really learn about this character until this year, when he appeared in Agents of Atlas and the War of the Realms, that is. In his current run, he's also running with Shang-Chi, who you should be familiar with. So the run seems to take place before the events of the War of the Realms, as he doesn't even really know how to wield this sword. He doesn't really know what he's doing. We are on issue 4 of Swordmaster as of when this video was recorded. All we have learned up until now is that the sword that he wields was left for him by his father, and his father disappeared. The series deals with him really searching for his father. Now, the sword itself is pretty ancient. It was crafted during an ancient war in which 3 tribes banded together to fight this Chi demon. The leaders of those tribes were all given 3 weapons that were created essentially by their ancestors. Now, Lin Lai is the blade of Fu Xi, which more so he has that blade. That's what he is carrying, which means that he's a descendant of them, or that tribe. He learns this after running into Ji Shuang, who is a descendant of the Nuwa tribe, which is why she gets to wield one of the 3 weapons. The 3 leaders took a vow, though, to block the tombs of Chi Yu, but that seal was recently broken, thus causing all of these problems. So Swordmaster doesn't have superpowers or anything like that. He can just really wield a weapon of the gods, or from the gods, if you will. What the sword can actually do, well, we're sort of learning that on the fly. Considering that there's going to be a Shang-Chi movie, I would not be at all surprised if this character appears in it as a sort of boost to one of Marvel's, of course, newer characters. I may actually be butchering some of these guys' names, but man, y'all gotta cut me some sort of slack. also keep in mind that some of these characters have appeared in games. Actually, some of them appeared in games before they appeared in the actual comic books. But let's move on to another character that is also based out of Shanghai. Lei Ling, aka Arrow, also appeared as a Chinese property last year, but it is in English as of now after the New Agents of Atlas in the War of the Realms. Even though she has her own run, we don't really know how she got her powers yet, so it seems almost like she's a mutant, but I'm sure we're going to get some more explanation going down the road. Of course, she has wind-related powers, which is implied by the name, but that details much more. She can hear heartbeats along with her aerokinesis, and we learn more as the story goes on as far as what she can do with her powers. We do know that she is an architect, and the series begins with her fighting one of her buildings that actually ended up coming to life. We also meet her teacher and mentor by the name of Madame Wong, who seems to be behind these attacks or these attacking buildings, and she also has a new apprentice that Arrow is in combat with. She has a boyfriend also by the name of Zhou Yu, and the artwork in this book is amazing. And much like Swordmaster, she has a series, so you will know more about this character after the day I recorded and uploaded this video. Perhaps the most important thing early on in the Arrow run is that there are stories about Wave in them. Now, Wave is another character we actually first see in the War of the Realms New Agents of Atlas. She is from the Philippines and her name is Pearl Pangan. As implied by her name, she has these water-related powers. She got those, we learned in Arrow issue 1, as a product of this experiment by a company called Allantech. They thought she'd be this great subject for these studies because she was a great swimmer, and they approached her saying that they were doing these studies, and those studies gave her powers after this attack by the Triumph Division. Now, the story in Arrow actually deals with her getting back at Allantech, who seem to be also doing these experiments on others. Still, she also actually is on the run from the Triumph Division, and it's important to note that she was on that team at one point, as recent as the War of the Realms. White Fox. Now, White Fox is the oldest character of the bunch, not in age, but in terms of when we were introduced to her in a comic book. She's from South Korea. She debuted in the Contest of Champions run, but that was only, 4 years ago? So she's still relatively new. She hasn't been developed and committed to until really recently. Now, she is of the Kamiho race, which are a group of mythical shapeshifters. White Fox's real name is Amy Han. We learned about her origin in her own little one-shot, and she currently works with the South Korean National Intelligence Service, and the one-shot deals with what led up to her getting that gig. The story deals with her being in high school, so it's a, flashback. She was raised by her aunt, as her mother was killed by humans, which makes her the last of this sort of mythical race. Now, she's mixed. Her father was a regular old human, but considering this race to be a threat, they've been hunted by both the humans and this group known as the Samjoku. And in this one shot, she sticks up for this nerdy friend that she has, who has this father in trouble with this sort of, let's call him an Asian mafia. So, of course, her friend is kidnapped, and one of the nappers happens to be of the Samjoku. Now, saving her friend, she was caught on tape, and that's how she gets this gig with this intelligence service. Now, we still don't really know what all her powers entail. This may be for sort of writers to decide along the way, but we know she can shapeshift into this White Fox, as implied by her name, which seems to really amplify, let's say, her speed and her strength and agility and so forth. But you don't get the feel that she's like a werewolf, something far more, let's say, mythical than that. Now let's talk Luna Snow, who I personally think is going to have the most success out of all the characters that I've talked about and the one I'm going to talk about after this, especially internationally, because she's a K-pop star. Braun in Agents of Atlas has the hots for her, and we got a glimpse of Luna Snow in the comics in the New Agents of Atlas. We found more about her origin in the one-shot. Now, her real name is, it's not even Luna Snow. It's nothing close. It's Seo Hee. Her stage name was Luna, and after killing it in an audition, she was signed to be part of this group called Forlit or something of that nature. And in the one shot, they have their concert. So it's a musical group, by the way. But they have their concert rated by an agent of a group called AIM and her group. Now, the agent's name is the Joro Spider, and she's trying to get this technology, which is what powers these visual effects. This advanced technology. Now, apparently, it's one of the most advanced technologies there are. After being thrown in this Cairo reactor with her crew, now Luna Snow seems to get the powers that she has and then gets to looking like you see her look now, with her hair being both black and white, and she has one blue eye. So of course she fights the Joro Spider, barely able to control these powers. And after defeating her, thus displaying her powers to the public, the crowd is chanting Luna Snow. Now, an interesting thing about this character is that she does not adopt the usual alias, with her identity and secrecy, as a lot of heroes do, right? From the get-go, when she got her powers, she was known to the public. It was situational, but that's just what happened. And her combat ability seemed to benefit her from really her dancing ability. So she has this sort of speed and agility. It's not necessarily punch, kick. I've been trained to, whoop your butt. It's none of that. Now, with that being said, Marvel is not playing around with his character's persona, as they even released a song that has been marketed as being made by Luna Snow that you can go check out. It ain't really my thing. And lastly, the character we know the least about is Dan B or Dan Bai, aka Crescent. Now, Crescent is another South Korean character, but is the youngest of the bunch, as she is just a kid. She has the spiritual bear named Io that is summoned when she puts on this mask. Marvel gives a breakdown of the character's origin at the end of the New Agents of Atlas issue 3, and that's in the War of the Realms. It states that she was raised by a single father who was an antiques dealer, and he was forced to acquire powerful ancient artifacts by the sorceress Morgan Le Fay. One day, the father disappeared and left with this red bear mask in his bedroom, right? She clutched the mask, and by she I mean Dan, and that's when a bunch of goons just raided her crib, and the bear then appeared and helped her. So they have this bond and are on a mission to find her father, of course. This sounds sort of similar to Swordmaster in terms of the father's disappearance and leaving this sort of weapon. As of this video, the character has not appeared after the War of the Realms.
That's gonna wrap it up for this video. Look, Marvel, this is all I ask. I get it. Not all of these characters are going to stick, but that should be expected when it comes to developing any comic book character. Think about all the characters that have been developed, or more so lack thereof, over the last, let's say, 50 years when it comes to the major two in Marvel and DC. Some of them you just forget about and you really don't know about unless you read them, because they didn't really stick with the audience. And that is to be expected with some of these. I don't expect all of these to stick around, though some like Luna Snow and Wave seem to have a little more potential than others. I don't expect them all to stick around, but this attempt is what you have to do. You consider the decades of character building that a lot of the characters that we know and love had throughout the years. You have to really expect that when it comes to these newer characters. Don't be lazy and just race change or retcon other original characters. Just make new ones. And if they are of any good, just like we fell in love with some of the older characters, we'll fall in love with some of the newer characters, and you can build that demand. But that's not going to happen by just making your fan base angry because, you want to be lazy and you want to take a shortcut by just making another copy of Spider-Man. I know everybody's favorite tokenized characters is Miles Morales, considering the recent movie that came out, but nonetheless, when you consider, I guess, his attitude and how he acts, his persona, he's really, yes, he has a couple of power changes, but he's just Black Spider-Man, or half Black Spider-Man. But all I ask for particularly is just original characters. And you're onto something. Hopefully they continue this trend and we'll see what happens.
Yo guys, if you enjoyed this video, keep in mind that you can visit my Patreon at patreon.com/EricDJuly. And with a vlog request, I get to do videos like this for you.